All right, so today we are looking at some more layer styles, which are ways that we can style layers with things like shadows and strokes. We've already looked at them a little bit, but this worksheet is going to take you through a couple more of them and give you some time to practice applying them to see how you can style your layers. So when you download the Layer Styles worksheet, the first thing I want to point out here is that over in our layers panel, we have two separate artboards. We've not seen this before, but that's something you can do in Photoshop. You can make multiple artboards, kind of like having multiple pages in your document. And you'll notice each artboard can be expanded or minimized. So if I expand artboard 1, here's everything in artboard 1. You'll also notice there are some groups that are locked, like it says locked, and titles. This is where I put all the stuff that you guys don't need to edit in these worksheets. So that's why it's locked. That way, if you do click on it, like if I click on this text over here, I can't move it or anything. It's not going to select it because it's in these locked groups or folders. And we'll learn more about grouping layers later. So right now, if I hit Z on my keyboard to zoom, I can hit Z, click and drag to the right to zoom in, and use the space bar to kind of position my document so I can see. You always want to zoom in so you can see what you're doing here and read the directions just fine. So with the move tool selected, and remember, you can always just hit V on your keyboard to get your move tool. As long as up here it says auto select in my options bar, as long as that is checked, whichever circle I click on will get selected in my layers panel. You see how my layers panel is switching around as I click on each different one. So that's convenient. We want to leave auto select turned on for this because it's going to make it much easier. So if I click on this first circle, boom, now it's selected in my layers panel. And it wants me to apply a bevel and emboss layer style. So the way I typically get to the layer style menu, I think I showed you in class, you can click on the effects down here next to the mask button and you can get to bevel and emboss that way. The way I kind of prefer to do it, as it says in the directions, double click on the gray part of the layer in the layers panel. This can be a little bit tricky because if you double click on the name of the layer, it's going to try to allow you to rename it. We don't want to do that. We want to double click just on the gray part. Any of this over here. When I do that, it brings up the layer style menu. You can see the name of the layer that you're working on, and you have all these styles that you can apply to your layer. The landing page, it lands on blending options, which we're going to learn more about blend modes in the next class. So for right now, we'll kind of forget this screen. Bevel and emboss is the first option. So if I check it, I've just turned it on. I can't see any of the options for bevel and emboss because I have to also make sure it's selected in this little menu. Now that I have it selected, I can start tweaking the settings to stylize my circle. So you can see right now I'm set on inner bevel. You can again play with each one of these, see what they look like. Inner bevel, I think it's going to make it kind of look 3D. If I take the size up, you can see it's kind of making it look like it's rising out of the page there with the shadow, some highlights. We can reverse it here. There's a whole section on the shading, right? If I wanted to bring the highlights, bring the bright areas up, I could do that. Bring the shadows, make the shadows darker. However you want to stylize it, you can kind of play with it. So then I would hit OK, and I'd be done, right? I just applied a layer style to this, this circle. Come over to the next one, click on it to make sure it's selected over here, and I know which one, and then I can, again, double click on the layers, double click on the gray part to bring up my layer style menu, and then I can come down here and turn on contour, which is underneath bevel and emboss. And it's the same sort of thing. I'm not seeing the settings yet, so I got to make sure I click on it, and you'll notice for this one you only have really the range to adjust. So you can stylize it how you want. So go through each of these. I'm not going to show you all of them. You're going to have to kind of play with them as you go. The other one I will show you though is, say, gradient overlay, because we have done some work with gradients so far. So if we select that circle, double click on the gray part and find gradient overlay in the menu, all that's going to do, think about what it's called, gradient overlay. It's putting a gradient on top of what we already had. So now I can come in and I can set my gradient, right? Set my color stops just like we did when we were making the backgrounds for our initials assignment. Maybe make like a nice kind of red to blue gradient. I like that. Maybe though I don't want it red to blue because it's a circle. Maybe I'll choose a radial one. It'll kind of look like a target or something. Cool. So let's say I'm done with Artboard 1. Now I can minimize Artboard 1 so it's not distracting me in my layers panel. And I can come over to Artboard 2. And I'm going to grab my space bar to get my hand tool and just kind of scroll over like that. Now, it's the same kind of thing, except we're going to apply multiple layer styles. So on this first flower, it wants us to apply bevel and emboss, drop shadow, and an inner glow. So it's the same process, right? Select your flower, double click on the gray part, and it's just a matter of adding multiple layer styles. So we could turn on that bevel and emboss and play with the settings if we wanted. We could turn on our drop shadow. I do want to show you this cool trick when you're playing with your drop shadow. One of the most important things about it is where it is. So, you know, if it's super far away, like this, the drop shadow is very far away, or if it's very close, if it's below or off to the side, and you can play with the angle and the distance using these settings in the layer style menu, which is fine. You can do that. Nice trick though that I learned, if you come over here to your actual shadow and you just click on it, we can move it around. And the only time you can do this is when you're in this layer style menu and you have drop shadow selected. And then you can just position it how you want. Let's say I like that. And then an inner glow as well. We'll turn that on. We'll maybe make ourselves some kind of red inner glow. Turn the size up so we can see it. Turn the opacity up. You can see it a little bit more. Sure, looks great. So one of the great things about layer styles is that they are non-destructive. If you'll notice over here in the layer style, the original purple flower is still there. All we've done is add effects to it. And so this is non-destructive because we've not changed the original pixels of the flower. If we were to turn the effects off, the flower goes back to the way it was. So again, this is great because it's non-destructive. We did not destroy or change any of the original pixels. They're still there in case we need them. For the last, and you can do the same thing for the sailboat, it's going to ask for contour and satin. For the last two, it's kind of a challenge. You have this elephant that's stylized over here with a couple layer styles. You need to figure out what they are and make your elephant look like theirs. Okay? And once you get a feel for this, you'll kind of realize like, oh, you know, I see that this elephant has a white line around the outside. That's probably a stroke. Remember, we put strokes on our letters before in our initials. It's a very thin stroke, but it sure looks like a stroke. And then it's also got some kind of, you know, inner glow or inner highlights. You'll have to play around and try to find that. This one as well, you'll notice, oh, that sure looks like what we were just working on, a gradient. So maybe it's got a gradient overlay on it. And it also looks like behind it, there's a tiny blurred out shadow. So maybe it's a drop shadow. There are your hints there. And when you're done, just to review again, let's say if we were mid-job on this right now, I would want to go up here to File, Save As. That way I could save this as a PSD and continue editing it later. Of course, you would save it on your flash drive in your worksheets folder. If we're done with this, we'll export it as a JPEG to submit on Canvas. So that's just File, Export, and then Export As. And it will ask you what kind of format you want. We want JPEG. We want to make sure both our artboards get exported. So they should both be selected by default. And then we will say JPEG. That's all that other stuff is fine. And export. And then when it asks you where do you want to save it, you would save it in your flash drive, in your worksheets folder, and then submit on Canvas. And then you're done.